What's going on? What's good? What's shaking? What's popping? All that good stuff. My name is Trey Hope. You can call me Trey Codes though. And today I'm going to be talking about something that is very prevalent in the news right now. I'm sure you've heard about it, and it's AI. But I'm not going to be talking about open AI's ChatGPT. I'm actually going to be talking about another AI model by Google, which is called Gemini. And luckily for me and you, they've created a Flutter package that allows us to incorporate Gemini, the AI model, in our own app. So I'm going to be demonstrating just what we can do with this AI model and see the capabilities that it can possess to make our apps even better. So without further ado, as always, let's jump into today's video. So like I said earlier, we're going to be using Gemini, Google's AI model, and I thought it'd be a good spin to actually make an app where we're using it. So in this demonstration, we're going to be using AI to generate random raps about fruit. So we're going to make a fruit rap quiz app. That's a tongue twister, but just rock with me, okay? So essentially, it's going to generate random raps about whatever fruit we pass into it, and then we're going to prompt the user to guess what fruit that this rap was generated off of. So it'll be a good way to both demonstrate how to use Gemini, as well as just set up a very simplistic Flutter app as well. So before we get into the demo today, as always, I want to give shout outs to the videos that I watched to get some more insight on this. I try to make it a personal goal to watch at least 3 videos of whatever topic I'm about to discuss, just so, I don't go into it completely dumbfounded. But first, I want to shout out Akshit Madan. My apologies if I mispronounce your name, but he did a pretty good video where he was building a mobile app with Flutter and Gemini. So I thought that was pretty impressive, very helpful. Shout out to my guy Emmett at Flutter Atlanta. They had a meetup where they were discussing how to incorporate Gemini into their Flutter app. And that was a pretty lengthy discussion, so that was good as well. There's also a gentleman by the name of Tyler Codes. He also incorporated Gemini into like a game show host type app. So another good resource there as well. And then finally, a gentleman by the name of Code Per. I think I'm pronouncing that right. But he created a Flutter app as well where he incorporated Gemini. So a lot of these were kind of based around, I guess, like conversations or game show type vibes, but they were very insightful on getting more information on exactly how to use Gemini with Flutter. Last thing before we jump into the video today, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. That way we stay connected and I can be sure to give you more content of what actually helps you as a developer. All right, so we're in our Flutter app. I have a basic Flutter app set up. I'm going to just go over some of the configuration. That way I can save us a little bit of time. So first, let me say that the package that we're using is Flutter Gemini version 2.0.3, published 25 days ago, 207 likes, 140 pub points, and 94% popularity. So it'll be perfect for what we are trying to accomplish today. So over here in the pubspec.yaml file, I have the dependencies that we're using, Cupertino icons, that's just for basic icons in the app, Flutter Gemini, as I just discussed, so that we can use the Gemini API, Flutter Riverpod, that way this is the state management that I'll be using for this app. Don't get too caught up on exactly why this is important. Any state management will work, but I chose to use Riverpod just because that's what I've been using lately. Gap, which is going to help us with some UI spacing between widgets. Google Fonts, which is going to help us change the theme of the app, and then Lottie, which will allow us to add animations to the app. And I will explain, let's see, I have Lottie up right now. So I just came across Lottie, but I guess it's like, I don't know how to explain it, like lightweight SVG animation type things. But as you can see here, I have some saved for the app, but just some moving animations that'll make the app a little bit more user friendly. So in my personal opinion, I think Lottie files are pretty cool. I would get the paid membership because the free tier doesn't offer the best options for animations. But just keep that in mind that when you go to Lottie Files, that you might want to get the paid membership to take advantage of some of the best animations that they provide. All right, so that's the pubspec.yaml. Within the main.dart, simple setup. We're only calling the normal functions, widget, Flutter binding, just to make sure all the widgets have been binded properly. And then a basic material app that has a center that says fruit wrap, because that is the name of our app. And then we have a fruit model because we are going to be using 10 different fruits to prompt the user. and each fruit object will have a name, a color, and a Lottie builder, which is essentially the widget that will display the animation that corresponds to that fruit. And then finally, the globals directory, which is just all the constant files, or the global variables, I should say. We have this array of fruits, and we have 10 fruits that we'll be working with: apple, banana, blueberry, cherries, coconut, kiwi, mangosteen, papaya, peach, and pear. And then, of course, their color and their animations. And we also have another one for the fruit basket, which we'll be using for like a loading spinner type thing. So that's all that there is for the global setup. So we're good there. Let's go ahead and run this app so far just to see what we have. All right, we have the fruit wrap app loaded up. Very basic right now, very ugly also. Also, I forgot to add, the assets are, the Lottie files are downloaded as JSON files, so you'll see all these JSON files within the assets. But, all right, we have our app loaded up. Like I said, it's very basic. It's just a center widget with text in the middle that says fruit wrap. So let's go ahead and actually jump into the application. So the first thing that we need to do is add an API key, because when talking to Gemini, we need to authenticate ourselves. That way, just not anyone is using the API unwillingly. Let's see here. So we can go to Google AI Studio. I'll drop a link in the description, but essentially you just want to sign in with your Google profile. And then from there, you'll go to get API key. Now you would click create API key. I already have one created, so I'm going to skip that step, but just know it's very simple. You just hit that button, it generates it, and then it says not to share with anyone. Here I am about to share mine with you, but I'm most likely just going to deactivate this API key once this video is done. But just know that we need to copy this API key and come back over to our app, and then we want to add this to our globals directory. Okay, so static const Google API key. All right. And then we also want to update the theme of the app, because I want to make it look a little bit more user-friendly. So we'll change the theme, say theme data, text theme, and it's going to be Google fonts, because we're using Google fonts for our theme. And there's a cool font that I came across, Comforta text theme. I think that's how you pronounce it. This no longer becomes a const because we are using this class, this object, and we'll replace that with a const. All right, and then last but not least, we need to actually initialize Gemini. That way we can use it throughout our app. So within here, we'll just go under widgets, Flutter binding, and call Gemini.init. I need to import it first. All right, init, and then it's going to ask for API key. So we'll call our globals class, import that. All right, import that globals that Google API key. And then we also want to turn on enable debugging. That way we can get some extra information while we're using Gemini. All right, so that's all we need so far. Refreshing this won't do anything because we haven't changed the UI yet. So that's cool. But now we're going to the next step, which is creating the demo page that is going to be the actual page where we're hosting the app, where everything's going to be happening at. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new page, a new widget essentially. So I'll call new file DemoPage.dart, and I'm going to be using Riverpod. So I won't get into too much detail exactly the syntax of everything with Riverpod, but just know that it's a state management that will allow us to update the state of the application while we're working with it. So I'm going to make this I'm going to use this actually stateful widget, even though it's not a stateful widget. I'm going to change some things. It's a consumer stateful widget. And okay, didn't work. Let me try this again. Stateful widget. There we go. Demo page, and it is a consumer stateful widget, and it is consumer state here. And we want to change the build method as well. Okay, so I know I just did a lot, but essentially I'm just creating a widget with a state that's using Riverpod, which is consumer stateful widget. Let me add my imports back here. All right, great. So now we got that. Let's go ahead and update the UI. We're going to return a scaffold for right now with an app bar. And the title will be a text widget that says fruit wrap. Okay. Now, let me add this const modifier here. So now we can go back to the main.dart and actually replace this center widget with the demo page and add our import. All right, so now if we refresh, Cool. We got fruit wrap app. I'm gonna make this text a little bold because I don't like how it just looks kind of thin. So let's say style, text style, font weight, bold. All right, cool. We can knock that off our list. And I'm actually going to move this into the demo page because we're pretty much done with the main .dart file for now. We'll touch it again in a little bit, but for right now we're good. All right, so now we can actually jump into using Gemini. So we're going to be using the API for streaming generative content. This is when we prompt Gemini for something and it feeds us responses back based on whatever we asked it. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. Actually, within the demo page, we need to create an instance of Gemini. So I'll say final Gemini equals Gemini.instance. Need to import this instance. And then I'm going to create a method, a void method called stream generative content. Okay. And we need to create a prompt to ask it first. Okay. So let's just ask it who was the first president. So we'll say final const prompt equals who was the first president. All right, we have our prompt. Now we can actually call Gemini and then use this method stream generate content. Pass in the prompt, okay? And then we'll add this listener on here because we're going to want to be able to know once we actually start getting responses, we'll want to change the state, but that's going to happen later in the app. But just know right now we are generating responses based off the prompt that we give Gemini. Okay, so that's there. But in order to display it, we could try to create our own widget, but with Flutter Gemini, the Flutter package, they have a widget that displays the responses in like a type texting format. So it looks like it's typing on the screen. It's pretty cool. So we'll be using that. So let's go to the body and we'll create a column with children. Take that widget out. All right, and there's a Gemini response type view. And it has a few things on here to keep, or that we're going to be working with. So if I can get it the format right. Oh, that's what. Right now we'll just return a container. I think I spelled container wrong. Okay. So as you can see here, the builder has a context, a child, a response, and loading. So we need to watch out for two scenarios. One is if it's loading, we don't want to really display anything. And it's a Boolean, so we can do a simple check that says, if loading, then we want to return a circular progress indicator. Okay, that handles the loading state. And let me format this a little bit. I can't do that. All right. Next thing is the response. If the response is not null, that means we actually have a response, because response is a nullable string, meaning that we may not get a response for whatever reason. We may have not asked the right question, the API key stopped working, whatever it may be. The response may be null, so we're first going to check if it's null. So if it's not null, then that's when we can return the text of the response. Okay. Now, if it's not loading and the response is null, then we'll just return a size box, which is basically just a blank screen for this widget. All right, cool. So we got that widget out the way, but now we need a way to actually call this stream generative content method. So we'll just add an elevated button below the widget. Elevated button, the on press will call stream generative content, and the text will say generate. All right, add the comps there. All right, cool. Our button is way too high right now. That's because we need to wrap this in an expanded widget to take up all of the room of the column. All right, and now our generate button is too low, so we can wrap this in a safe area widget. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Wrap with widget, safe area. Cool, now our widget's in there, so let's try generating some content. So if we hit generate, we got the circular progress indicator, and then it says George Washington. Because remember, our prompt was who was the first president. So once it got its response, it now printed it out to the screen. I personally don't like how small it is, so I'm going to make the font size a little bit bigger. Text, oops. Looks a little bit better. All right, let's try another prompt. Let's say, give me a recipe for Thanksgiving without using a turkey. All right, spinning indicator, and once it's ready, it'll start spitting out information for us. It should. All right, roasted prime rib with garlic herb crust. Okay, so as you can see, we got our response. The problem is, you see that the response is a little bit bigger than what's being displayed on the window. We can fix this by wrapping this in a single child scroll view. Sorry. Single child scroll view. All right. Now we can scroll the entire response. Okay. It's a pretty long recipe. All right. And then let's also add some padding to this because it looks a little tight on the edges. I think I would wrap this in the padding first. And then the padding edge insets, all 32. All right, cool. So now we got some padding and we got our responses coming out on the screen. So that's good. So let's go ahead and take this off the list. All right, so we have some responses coming back, but now we want to actually have it generate a random wrap about the fruit. Like I said earlier, it's the fruit wrap app. So we want to generate a random wrap. Let's have it generate a wrap about apples. So for the prompt, we're going to change this to say, give me a short wrap about the fruit apple, but do not use the word apple in the wrap. And the reason I'm adding the second clause to this prompt is because if we're guessing what the wrap was about, we don't want the fruit name to be in the wrap itself. So you got to be very specific with the prompt that you give Gemini. So it says, give me a short wrap about the fruit apple, but do not use the word apple in the wrap. All right, let's try this and see what we get. All right, in the realm of fruits, I reign supreme, a juicy orb with qualities that gleam, a vibrant hue, a crisp and sweet bite. I'm the epitome of summer's delight. I hate that wrap, but as you can see here, it gave us about, I'd say, was that 16 bars? If my math's correct, but it's producing the wrap how we want it to. Perfect. Now, since it's a fruit wrap app, let's go ahead and change this circular progress indicator to instead use an animation that we got from Lottie. So I'm going to return instead a globals. I need to import that fruit basket. So now when we hit generate, we have this cool animation of bouncing fruit that makes the screen just a little bit more appealing to look at while we're waiting for the responses to be generated. Yeah, it's pretty, I like Lottie. I'm rocking with Lottie. All right, so we got our fruit wrap prompt and the fruit animation. Now let's talk about how we can kind of modify the prompt to our liking, I guess, just add some configuration to it. So one of the things that we can do is change the generation config. So we'll create a generation config object within the prompt. And on the generation config, there's a couple things, or there's a few things that you can modify, but the two that I think are probably the most important, or the one that you can, that would affect you the most, is first the temperature. So temperature represents how random or how specific the responses will be. So it's based on a scale of 0 to 1. The lower the value, the more specific and concise the responses will be. They won't really derive or divvy off into another type of wrap. But if it's at a temperature of 1, that means we want a different wrap almost every time. Very random, okay? So let's see what that looks like when we have a temperature of 0 to begin with. So with the temperature of 0, it's probably gonna be similar wraps like I said. So we'll see, it says, yo, check it, the king of the fruit game. I'm gonna try it again. All right, taking a little while. I'm gonna refresh this. Yo, check it, the king of the fruit game. Generate again. Yo, check it, the king of the fruit game. Let's try it again. Yo, check it, the king of the fruit game. All right, you see how the wraps kind of start off the exact same, and I'm pretty sure that the entire wrap didn't really change too much throughout the different bars. But if we change it to a temperature of 1, we should get different responses every time. Taking a little while. So my internet might be a little bit slow with the generation, but let's give it 3 more seconds. Okay, taking too long. Refresh that, generate. All right, from the tree's embrace, I emerged with grace, a juicy orb, and then the response, I guess, had an issue there and stopped. Let's see what wrap we get this time. Yeah, this internet is making it very slow to fetch. Unless there's another issue here. Yeah, I think, okay. I'm not sure why it's giving that error. Let's try to generate again. Give me a short wrap. Yo, check it, the king of the fruit realm. Let's try it again. Green or yellow, I stand out in the view. All right, different wrap. Let's try it again. Yo, check it, it's the forbidden fruit, so sweet. So you see how the bars, they pretty much switched up every time we hit the generate button. That's because the temperature was at its highest capacity. So we're going to get a random response every time. All right, so that's good. We'll keep it at 1 because we want it to be a quiz, so we want it to be different for the user that's playing. And then we can also change the max output tokens. And the tokens represent how many characters are coming back in the response itself. So I believe 1 token corresponds to like 4 characters, I think, something like that. And then like 100 tokens represents roughly 60 to 80 words. So if we have a lower max output tokens amount, we would get a shorter wrap back. So let's generate that now. That was a little too short. All right, so this is our wrap with 100 max output tokens. It didn't even finish the wrap. But if I were to add 500 for the max output tokens, I should get a much lengthier wrap. As you can see here, yeah, he started going in a little bit, okay? So we're going to keep it at 500 because we want the user to have enough information to actually guess what this fruit is about or which fruit that this wrap is about. Let's take that off the list. Now let's modify the safety settings. That's another configuration that you can modify on the prompt. Similar to GenerationConfig, we're going to be passing in the configurations, but this one is going to take an array of safety settings because you can have multiple safety settings. So let's add our first safety setting. And choose a category. We'll choose hate speech for the category. And for the threshold, we'll choose block none. Okay. So with the categories, it's an enum, but it's 4 different categories. We have harassment, which is negative or harmful comments targeting identity and or protected attributes. We have hate speech, which is content that is rude, disrespectful, or profane. Sexually explicit, which contains references to sexual acts or other lewd content, and then dangerous, which promotes, facilitates, or encourages harmful acts. So you can add safety settings for all categories. For this wrap, I'm gonna just make sure that we don't have any hate speech coming through, and then you can modify what threshold you want the blocking to occur. So if you have block none, you'll always show regardless of probability of unsafe content. Block only high, block when there's a high probability of unsafe content, block medium and above, block when medium or high probability of unsafe content, block low and above, block when low, medium, or high probability of unsafe content. And then finally, harm block threshold unspecified. The threshold is unspecified, block using the default threshold. So for this hate speech, we don't want any of it, so we'll set it to block low and above. Block, low, and above. So any type of hate speech that's coming through, it most likely would be blocked, okay? All right, so, and like I said, we can add multiple safety settings, so we can add another one for harassment. All right, now I would try to demonstrate that, but since these are wraps about fruit, we're not really gonna have any harassment or hate speech coming through anyways. So we can go ahead and continue on. Now I want to create a UIState notifier because in Riverpod, since it's state management, we want to be able to know the current state of the app while the user is using it. Because right now, when we click generate, the view, like the buttons is acting as if there's no state to the app. Like it's not loading, it's not finished, blase, blase. So we're going to create a UIState notifier that is going to be responsible for listening to changes of the state of the app. And we're going to have 3 states starting out. First state is not started. That's the first state that we are in the app when you load the app. Then we have loading, which we will use whenever the Gemini is fetching responses. And then finally, we'll have loaded, which means that, all right, now we have some responses coming back. It's not complete with all our responses, but it's no longer doing its query, so to speak. So, excuse me. So I'm going to create a new folder called notifiers. And in here, I'll create UIState notifier.dart. And I'm going to create an enum for the UIState. And we have those 3 states that I started, 3 states that I stated. We have not started, loading. Then we need to create the notifier. We'll call this UIState notifier, and it extends a notifier from Riverpod, and it's going to be of type UIState because we're listening to changes of the UIState. All right, let's add our missing override. As you can see here, it's expecting a UIState. So this is the build method is saying, all right, what is the state of this notifier by default when it first starts? And obviously, you guessed it, it's going to be not started. So we're going to set this equal to UIState.notStarted. Now, within here, we need to go ahead and create a provider. The way I try to explain providers and notifiers, and I could be wrong in this analogy, but I think notifiers are essentially like data and functions that exist in some other world in another galaxy, and it has the information we need, but we can't access it because it's in another galaxy. But providers are essentially a portal or a window that allow us to kind of put our hand through that window and then grab the notifier or data from that other world that we need anywhere in the app. Okay, so providers will give us, they provide the notifier. Okay, so I'll create a new file called providers.dart class providers, and we'll make a static final UI state notifier equals notifier provider. And we're actually going to call this a UI state provider, not a notifier. All right, and then we need to specify what is the notifier that we're using, which is the UI state notifier, and then what state is it managing, which is UI state. And then we need to instantiate the UI state notifier by calling UI state notifier.new. And there we have it. Now we have our provider. And then within the demo page, we can now listen to changes on that state notifier, UI state notifier. So let me change this out, take this scaffold, and we're going to instead return this. All right, so we have the notifier and the provider created for controlling the UI state. So now we can actually listen for changes to that UI state within this widget. So whenever changes happen, we will automatically force rebuild the entire widget and give us the updated button that we want. We can do that by creating a UI state variable, and we'll call ref.watch. So we're going to be watching for any changes to this notifier. Providers dot, let me import that. Providers.UI state notifier provider. Okay, cool. And something to keep in mind is that I went ahead and in between scenes, I added the provider scope to our app. Just something to keep in mind. If you don't have this provider scope around your entire widget, you won't be able to use Riverpod. So make sure that you add that. Okay, so now that we have the UI state, we want to change this button to not be that button all the time. So we can actually create a function that will return a widget. Let's call it build button. It'll take in a UI state. And then we want to create a switch statement to go over all the possible states that we can have. So for the not started state, we want this exact button. So we'll just replace this here. Return elevated button. But instead of generate, let's have it say, let's get started. All right. And then for the loading state, we don't want the user to actually be able to interact with the button. So we'll set the on press to null, and we'll just have this say loading. And then finally, for now, we'll let the loaded button, it won't do anything, but it will just say loaded. All right, oops. All right, now we just need to replace this build button call where we had our button at, which was, I think, right here. Is that right? Expanded? Yeah, that's right. And then we're going to pass in that UI state that we got from our notifier, okay? Oops. All right, so now when we hit this button, let's get started, you see that the button never changed, even though it should. And the reason is we're listening for changes to the state, but we never actually changed the state like we need to. So in order to do that, we just need to go to where we specifically make these actionable calls and update our state. So the first area where we would change the state is once we click, let's get started. So within here, we're going to still call this stream generative content method, but first we're going to call ref.read providers.UIState notifier provider.notifier. Oh, we need to update the state. So in order to do that, we need to go back to our notifier and add a method that updates the state. So come down here, we have a void method that says update state. It takes in a UIState. And essentially what we're doing is we're just saying the state of this class. I know I'm saying state an awful lot, but we're updating the state of this class to be the UIState that's passed in. All right. So now in here, we can call update state, and we're going to set the state to loading. So once the user selects, let's get started, we're instantly going to go to the loading state. And we also want to update within the listener, because we want to update its state to loaded, because we're going to assume that once Gemini has responses coming back, that the user is ready for the next phase of the question. Okay, so we'll just have this here for updating it to the loaded state. All right, so let's refresh this and see what happens now. When we hit let's get started, button turns to loading, and then it says loaded once it's done. Okay, let's try that one more time. Let's get started, loading, loaded, perfect. All right, we knocked that off our list, and we're actually updating the UIState as well. So now what we want to do is we want to prompt the user to ask them, all right, what fruit is this wrap about? And in order to do that, we're going to create a text field that will accept the user's response. Keep in mind that since it's a text field, they have to enter the name of the fruit exactly how it is. So if it's apple, they can't throw an extra S, or they can't lowercase it. It has to be spelled the exact same way. I'm very strict for this app, just for this demo purpose. All right. So first thing we need to do is create a controller that is going to be responsible, a text editing controller that's responsible for controlling the value that is given to the text input. And then we know when we want to display the text field, we want to do it once the app is loaded, in the loaded state, because we're not asking the question before they got started or while it's loading. So down here in UI loaded, we will instead just return a text field. I'll add a controller to that. All right, so we got our text field down here. Doesn't look very pretty, needs some padding. So what we'll do is wrap this in some padding. Edge insets, we'll just do horizontal. All right, edge insets, symmetric, horizontal, and we'll do 32. And then the child will be that text input, the text field. All right, let's see what that looks like. All right, so we got some padding there, that's good. But let's add a few more things. I'm going to update the decoration to have an input decoration, because we're modifying how the input looks. Let's change the label text to say, let's see, what fruit is this wrap about? Okay, you see now it says what fruit is this app about? Cool. And then I also want to change the border. So I'll say border, we'll give it an outline, input border, border radius, circular of 30. All right, it's looking a little bit better now. Still got our texting ability, good. Now we need buttons that are going to allow us to clear the text field as well as submit their answer. And we're going to modify the prefix widget, which is going to be an icon button. The icon will be icons.cancel. And let's see, we need to add the onPress. The onPress method is essentially just going to clear the controller. And let's make that constant as well. Perfect. So now when we type, we hit X, it clears it out for us. And we want to do the same thing for the send, which is going to be the suffix. And for right now, it'll clear as well. But we'll change the icon to be send. All right, so right now, all it does is clear when both buttons are pressed. But we have it set up how we need to. All right, so let's knock that off the list. Now we need to check and see if the input that the user has given us matches the fruit that was selected. All right, so now up until this point, we've been generating a wrap of only apples, but we have 10 fruits to choose from. So let's go ahead and create a global fruit variable within this class that will be selected once the generate content method has been called. The stream generative content method has been called. So I'll come up here under the text editing controller. It'll be a late variable because we don't need a fruit assigned to it right now on initialization. However, by the time we do need fruit, we need it to have a value, and it will. All right, so let's add an import. And now we're going to go to our stream generative. I hope I'm saying this right. But now in here, we want to assign that fruit to be a random fruit in our a list of fruits. And remember, those are these fruits right here in our globals directory, okay? So in order to get the random value, we're going to use the math.dart class, the random object, which will give us a random index or random integer between 0 inclusive and the max value, which will be the length of the array, which is exclusive, meaning that it will give us a random number between, since we have 10 fruits, it's going to give us a random number between 0 and 9 because the value of the size of the array is 10, but that's exclusive. So it's going to be one below, so 0 to 9, which will prevent any one-off errors when we're assigning a random fruit to the variable. So let's say globals.fruits and then random. Let's do our import. Oops, random. Random. Why is it not doing that? Let me see. Random dot next int. I might have already had it. Okay, random dot next int, and then the max value will be the length of the array of fruits. Globals.fruits.length. All right, so now we're getting a random fruit, and we can now replace the instance or the apple text with the name of the fruit. Okay, and this will no longer be const because we're using a variable within here now. All right, cool. Let's try this out now and see what type of wrap we get. So now it's giving us a random wrap. Didn't generate anything. Let's try this again. All right, yo, check it. I'm yellow and sweet, a healthy treat, hard to beat, shaped like a boat with a creamy interior. I'm perfect for breakfast or a fruity elixir. I'm guessing that's a banana. All right, so, and we can check and see. We can cheat real quick. Let's see here. Let's see. The API call said, give me a short wrap about the fruit banana, but do not use the word banana in the wrap. All right, cool. So we're getting a random fruit. Now we need to check and see if the input that the user gives us reflects the actual fruit that's there. So within the submit method here, on the set method, still going to clear the field. So we'll put that back in there. However, now we want to say if controller.text equals fruit.name, debug print correct. That means they got the answer right. Otherwise, we'll say incorrect. All right, let's get that terminal back open so we can see this. All right, so now we know it's banana, so I'm gonna type in banana, hit send, it says correct. All right, now I'm gonna type in something that's not correct, potato, which isn't even in the list, and we'll get incorrect. Let's put that wrong. All right, good, so the check is working perfectly. So we'll take that off the list. Now I want to, instead of just, the debugger can print correct and incorrect, but that's not user friendly. The user has no idea what's in the debugger. So let's go ahead and create new states that will represent when the user is correct or incorrect on their guess. So let's go back to the UIState notifier. And in here, I'll add two new states, correct and incorrect. All right. Now, since we added more to the enum value, our build button method is giving us some issues because it doesn't know what to do when those two states have been reached. So we'll just exhaust those last states down here at the bottom. I think you put it at the bottom. Oh, add missing close clauses. Okay, there we go. And the thing is, when we're either correct or incorrect, we don't even want to display any buttons at the bottom. We want to change the entire screen. So what we want to do instead is, for this method, we just want to return a size box. No matter if they are correct or incorrect, we just return a size box, which is, like I said, a blank screen. All right, cool. And then within the build method of this widget, we can check to see if we are correct. State equals UIState.correct. So if we're correct, we're just going to return a center widget with a child that says correct. All right. Add a const here. And we're going to do the same thing when they're incorrect, but we're going to say incorrect. All right, let's refresh this and let's see. We are updating the state. We hit send. Oh, now we need to, like we did previously, we need to actually update the state. So we'll do that within here. Instead of printing out correct or incorrect, if the control.text equals the fruit.name, we go to the correct state. And if not, we go to the incorrect state. All right, so let's try this. Let's get started. All right, crystal skinned and sweet to the core, a juicy treat more than you adore, smooth as silk, a delicate delight, dripping with nectar, oh so bright. Apple's cousin. I'm gonna guess, that's tough. A peach? No, I'm gonna say a pear. Correct. All right, cool. So we got the correct one on that one. Let me try giving an incorrect answer. So I'm going to type, we don't have watermelon as an option, so I'm just going to type in watermelon. Watermelon. Incorrect. Ooh, I'm spelling these wrong today. But oh well, you get the picture. So we're going to the states properly. So we can take that off our list now. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to make this a little bit more visually appealing. So let's actually display some cool UI when they're in either correct or incorrect states. So we're going to create a widget that we'll use that will let us know if the user's answer was correct or not, and then display some information about their answer. So we'll create a new directory called widgets, new file called ResultView.dart. Class ResultView extends a consumer widget. Just Riverpod stuff, don't worry. Override, and right now let's return a container. Now the result view is going to need two things, like I said. It's going to need to know if the answer was correct or not. So we can create a Boolean value called correct. And then we also need the fruit because we need to know whether they're right or wrong, what fruit was actually the one that they were trying to guess. So final fruit. Okay. Do our import and then add our constructor. And then we need to require these when they're passed in. Fruit. All right. It should be good there. Take this framework out. All right. And then in here, let's replace the center widgets with our new widget result view. And the correct value for the correct state will be true. And we'll pass in the fruit or whatever it is at the time. And do the same thing for the incorrect state, but correct value will be false. All right, so I forgot which state we were in, but as you can see, we got this little pink square. Not exactly sure why an empty container displays this, but let's go ahead and modify this container. We want the height to be as high as it can go and the width to be as wide as it can go. And let's say the color is, let's just make the color of the fruit. So fruit.color. All right, so I forgot what fruit I selected, but brown is clearly the color associated with that, okay? So now that we got that in there, we can actually modify the colors a little bit to say, all right, if we were correct, we want to see the color of the fruit that we picked, right? But if we're incorrect, we'll just display a red background to represent an error. So within here, we'll just say, if correct, show fruit color, otherwise show colors.red. All right, so we were incorrect on our guess because we see red here, okay? All right, what else can we add? Let's add a child, let's add a column. Let's actually add the fruit animation from Lottie, okay? So we'll say fruit dot Lottie. All right, cool. So we were on coconut. It's a little too high for me, so let's bring that down. Change the main axis alignment to center. All right, perfect. Now it's in the center. Now let's add some text that says, all right, we'll say bingo if they were correct, and then sorry if they were incorrect. So let's add a text. If correct, say bingo. Otherwise, we'll say sorry with a sad face. All right. And we need to add a theme to that text because right now it doesn't have any styling. So we'll say style equals theme dot of context dot text theme dot headline large. All right, cool. And I want that text to be white actually, so I'm gonna do copy with color dot white. And then make sure to add the exclamation point here because headline large could be null. All right, perfect. It says sorry. Let's add another message here that will let us know if they were correct. We'll say you picked fruit name, whatever it is. And if they're wrong, we'll say the answer was fruit name. Okay, looking good. That text is a little too big though, so we'll try headline small. All right, cool. Now let's add some space. We'll use that gap widget that I talked about earlier. The cool thing with gap is when you're using rows or columns in Flutter, typically to add space in a row, since it's horizontal, you would specify a size box with a width, or if you want to add a space in a column, you would specify a size box with some height. But what gap does is you just specify how much space you want and it can automatically determine whether it's in a row or a column widget. So it just saves you some boilerplate code. So we'll give it a gap of 32 and then we'll add a button at the bottom that will allow us to restart the app and try again. So what this is going to do, you guessed it, we're going to update the state. So ref.read providers import providers.UIState notifier provider.notifier.update state. Let's see here, UIState dot not started. Let's see here. Oh, I gotta import that. UIState dot not started. All right, let's see here. What's it complaining about? Oh, the child. And it should say try again. I think that's right. Do I have it right? Oh, I think I added too much on there. Okay, that should be good. All right, cool. Answer was coconut. So let's try again. Let's try a new one. Yo, listen up, it's the sweetest fruit of all, a juicy crystal explosion that will make, and then it stopped generating for whatever reason. I don't have enough information to go off of. I'm gonna just say banana. All right, sorry, the answer was pear. Try again. All right, we're gonna get one of these right. Yo, check it. All right, that's not enough. Let's refresh this. We'll take this off our list as well. All right, let's get started. All right, I think it's something with the internet that's making the responses a little bit shorter right now. Maybe it's not fetching it all the way. I feel like it's throwing an error. So we're gonna do a little cheat real quick. Make a rap about Apple, so we'll type in Apple. All right, bingo, you picked Apple. Let's try it one more time with another fruit. We're gonna do, is that peach? Yeah, peach. Bingo, you picked peach. All right, cool. So I'm not exactly sure, I need to do more research on that, but I'm not sure why the responses kind of just stop like that. I feel like there's some type of error with something, or I don't know if it made my safety settings or what, but you get the gist of it. This is essentially how you would make use of Gemini for this app. Let me try typing banana one more time. Bingo, you pick banana. All right, so like I said, that's how you use Gemini and create a simplistic Flutter app with some cool Lottie animations to go by its side. So that is essentially how you can use Gemini and incorporate it into your Flutter app specifically. Of course, it's a standalone application, so you don't even need Flutter to use it. You can just head over to, I forgot the exact URL, but you can actually just mess with the prompts yourself. But if you do want to incorporate it into Flutter, use the Flutter Gemini package. It's very helpful. As always, I hope this video was helpful. As I said earlier, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, as I plan to just continue to dive more into different topics, especially things that interest me, like AI. So I'll keep doing demo projects like this. Keep learning, keep growing, you know what I mean? So as always, until next time, this is Trade Codes signing off. Have a great rest of your day.